Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, General Sir Mike Jackson on Iraq, the disputed elections in Egypt, and the studio will be invaded by Maasai warriors. Find out exactly why later on in the show. But first of all, Zimbabwe. Nearly a fortnight on from the presidential elections, there's still uncertainty and wrangling between Robert Mugabe's ZANU-PF party and Morgan Tsvangirai's MDC. An emergency summit has been called for this weekend in Zambia. Both leaders are expected to attend. So what's going on? In a minute or two, we'll be joined by the former head of the Commonwealth, who's just stepping down, Don McKinnon. But to get the latest news from Harare, I'm joined here in London by the MDC's representative for the UK and mainland Europe, Hebson Makuvise, and by Zimbabwean analyst George Shire, who is not a member of the MBC. Let's start with you, if we may. Let's start, in fact, with the headlines in today's paper. Opposition rejects runoff as Mugabe tightens grip. Why have you and your party taken that decision?
We feel it's unnecessary to have a runoff. We feel that Mugabe has already resorted to violence. People are being beaten up for having voted for the opposition, especially in the rural areas. We believe that the MDC won the election and our presidential candidate, Morgan Tsvangirai, won the presidential race. So we don't believe that we need to spill blood in order to announce a result of an election.
What do you make of this decision, George?
Well, I think the electoral process is not yet over, and I think the electoral process should be allowed to reach its conclusive end. I think that all projected tallies from all political parties and independent observers show that nobody is an overall majority so far. And I think in those circumstances it's reasonable to conclude that you should allow the electoral process to conclude. I think too that we're not likely to, much as it is in the public interest for everybody, on both political parties, that we're not likely to get an announcement from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission until after the High Court has made its judgment on Monday.
But why has it taken 2 weeks?
Well, you might as well ask, why did it take a month for the United States to announce the result about George Bush or anywhere else? As I said, it's in everybody's public interest for
yes,
those.
But in the case of the famous Chads and so on, with the first George Bush election in Florida, it was all public. The figures were all public. The debate was based on knowledge of the figures. Yes. In this case, the figures have been suppressed.
No, the figures have not been suppressed. I think that's nobody suppressed any figures. What there is that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, which is the legal entity which has responsibility for announcing those results, tells us it's not ready.
That the result is in the United States was public knowledge. There was nobody who was arrested. There was no violence. But we are talking of a violent dictator who has already started arresting election officials. They are already in prison. He is already disputing some of the constituencies, that is House of Assembly, before the result of an election has been announced. And let me say that even the High Court on Monday, even if the High Court on Monday rules that the Electoral Commission has to announce the result, the defense lawyer has already indicated that they are not going to do so because of outside pressures. Obviously, it's Robert Mugabe and his service chiefs who are threatening the Electoral Commission, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, not to announce the result. Because Robert Mugabe knows that he lost the election.
Look, I make a distinction between what one might call a party political broadcast and analyzing the situation so we can make sense of what's going on. I think if we can decode what the South African both the president, whether Zuma or Mbeki or the foreign officer, are talking about, everybody's talking about allowing the due process of law to take its course. That means allowing the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to make its announcements. They are the people who are mandated to do so. Both ZANU-PF and the MDC quite rightly would like to see the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission produce those results as soon as is possible. But what I am saying is that there is no evidence to suggest that they're being directed by one person or another. I think it would be unfortunate if they were pressurized, both internally or internally, to conclude its business in a way in which what is open to challenge. That is as far as the presidential elections are concerned.
George, do you know where the ballot boxes are now? They seem to be moved to a secret...
Some have been found, which is sort of miraculously lost. They've been found, they've handed over to the appropriate authorities. There are disparities between what was recorded at the polling booth and the information given to the constituency courts. There are recounts that, as we speak, that the Zimbabwe Election Commission are doing as far as the constituency vote is concerned. If I go back to the polling booth information, the polling booth information is not one, and no one is challenging what's on the polling booth. Everybody has tallied those results and concluded no one political party has an absolute majority for it. Even the MDC figures themselves do not show an absolute majority for them. And so that's one bit. The second bit is unless and until the ZEC, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, has tallied and verified the information they release, they will be not in a position to produce a result. It is as obvious as that.
The delay in announcing the result is a simple indication that the ZANU-PF, the opposition party now, as we speak, because they've lost the majority, they are not in power. So we refer to ZANU-PF as the opposition party. They are busy now instructing or giving directives to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to come up with, ghost ballot papers so that they can be stuffed among the ballot boxes, and ZANU-PF obviously will come out victorious.
And what about the meeting this weekend that's been arranged, Zambia, where we're told that both Mr. Tsvangirai and Mr. Mugabe will both be there? Could that make progress, do you think?
I would like to refer to what Aziz Pahad, the South African Deputy Foreign Minister, said on Thursday. He said Zimbabweans, the will of the Zimbabwean people was expressed in the election. And we hope and expect the SADC grouping to endorse the decision made by Zimbabweans to get rid of Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF. They voted for change and democracy and prosperity. So we expect the SADC leaders to talk to Robert Mugabe to step down so that the country and the people can move on. We don't need Robert Mugabe's expertise. It's not good for Zimbabweans. It's not good for the region either.
Thank you both very much indeed. That's very clear. Thank you very much indeed. Well, now, Zimbabwe, of course, was suspended from the Commonwealth in 2002 under its then Secretary-General, Don McKinnon. The following year, Robert Mugabe withdrew from the organisation altogether. When we spoke to Mr. McKinnon last year, he pinpointed the loss of Zimbabwe as the biggest regret of his time in office. Well, having left the post last month, after 8 years, how does he feel now? Don McKinnon joins us right now. Welcome, Don. Very good to have you.
Good to be here.
What do you feel now? You said that about Zimbabwe then. The drama has increased. The drama is at a height this weekend. What are your feelings now, and what do you think is going to happen?
Well, of course, it's what I hope will happen, and really, will that actually happen? Because we really do hope that this can be sorted out pretty rapidly. I think the problem is now emerging that, yes, there has never been a high level of confidence, really, in the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. And that is really only heightened now when this constant delay. And, elections are a very tense time in any country because so many people's future is resting on it. Particularly tense in Zimbabwe right now. And it really, you wouldn't normally expect SADC to get together as they are getting together this weekend under President Levi Mwanawasa of Zambia to try and sort something out. So it is very serious, but regretfully it's the lack of confidence people have in the Zimbabwe electoral system which is causing as much angst as anything.
They just don't think, even this election, they don't think was really free and fair.
Well,
Certainly
the last
not
two,
the
of course. Well, the last two, we had observers there in 2000 and 2002, and they were principally, although Commonwealth observers, they were predominantly African and Afro-Caribbean observers, and they pronounced very heavily against the elections at the time, and that was really the reason for the Zimbabwe becoming suspended from the Commonwealth. So the fact is, the commission itself, made up of seemingly good people, but those on the outside just don't feel that they truly represent all of Zimbabwe people, and that becomes a problem.
And would you, if you were looking at it as still being Director General, the Secretary General, would you feel that the Commonwealth has a role to play this weekend?
Well, look, I don't really want to get into a situation to try to prejudge what my success. I know all our folk in the Commonwealth Secretariat will be watching this very closely. Now, I mean, it's a known fact. President Mugabe certainly doesn't have any enthusiasm to talk to me. Well, he doesn't need to talk to me now anyway. But hopefully a page can be turned when the results of these elections come out. But it may not just be the results. It's what's the aftermath of the elections. Do people actually accept the results? And that's where the problem is right now. People are becoming very, very suspicious about how these results will emerge and what they will say.
What about the aftermath of Kenya? What happened in Kenya is, since our last conversation, what do you feel that can come back to normal Kenya, or will the effects of the ugly riots and deaths, will that live on?
I think it'll live on for a while, and it should never have got to that stage. Kenya should have had a much better election. It was clear there were things going on there that shouldn't have gone on. There were results emerging that everyone had a lot of doubt about. I hold off my hat to Kofi Annan for trying to sort it out, because it was beyond ever doing a recount. It was beyond ever running another election. It was a matter of how do you get out of this mess. And I just hope one thing comes out of that the people of Kenya say, never again must we go through that. Never again. Kenya should have done a lot better than what it did. But a lot of people were killed. A lot of payback will be in the ether. And it will take a few years before people are prepared to trust others who may not be of their tribe.
Of course, talking of free and fair elections, people thought that President Musharraf in Pakistan might try and rig the election. Whether he did try or not, we don't know, but he accepted the verdict
Correct.
that went against him and so on, and probably he deserves some credit for that.
He brought Pakistan a long way, really. I mean, I've had many discussions with him, had many arguments with him over a period of time, but by the time he got to the point of the elections, January this year, he had really achieved quite a lot for Pakistan in terms of an assembly which was very representative, bringing about a lot of anti-corruption measures. But as you say, he has accepted the results of the election. This brings a whole bunch of new people in. Judges have been restored to office, so it's going through a whole new period.
Does it mean that
his future,
they now qualify to re-enter the Commonwealth?
Well, this is the issue that's on right now, and I know my successor, who's had a long experience in South Asia, of course, will want to be engaging. And yes, as I left office, we had engagement, but we still had to bring together the ministers who would make the final judgment.
And Cyprus. I mean, Cyprus is suddenly in the headlines again after years of relatively obscure activity. Is there a peaceful future for Cyprus?
I think there is. I think the issue of the EU membership, which is very, very important to Cyprus, and of course it's a very important element in the thinking in northern Cyprus and of course in Turkey. So yes, a whole new government there, a mix of political flavours, you might say, making it up. But one hopes that they now treat pretty seriously the need to get that reunification there and establish the nature of a state that people feel comfortable, whether they're Turkish Cypriot or Greek Cypriot people, it doesn't really matter. But you know, these things do matter to these people, as you and I well know. But they've got to go beyond that. Too often we heard the same mantra week after week after week, and it wasn't going anywhere.
Well, we're talking through here, all the countries we're talking about are countries over which, of course, you had that superintendent role as Secretary General of the Commonwealth. What about Sri Lanka? I mean, and the ongoing bitterness, the ongoing almost war between the government and the Tamils.
Well, again, it's a very difficult one and been difficult for some time. And the Commonwealth, it was pretty much made clear to us, even before I took office, that the Tamil people didn't see the Commonwealth as being non-partisan. They saw us as being more attached to the government of Sri Lanka at the time, although the governments have changed during that period of time. So when you want to help a country in a mediation role, the first thing is you've got to be accepted by all sides. You've got to be seen to be quite neutral. Now, even though we would have been neutral, we weren't perceived to be neutral. So it was probably our default position, I can only call it a default position, was say, well, let's support the Norwegians, because the Norwegians did put in a tremendous amount of time, effort, money, commitment. And we did work with them. I used to get regular reports from them, and we were sort of backing up and doing the kind of projects in Sri Lanka which kind of reinforced those confidence building measures so necessary. So no, we weren't in the front line because one side didn't want us to be in the front line, but we were the next row back helping the Norwegians, who we believe were doing a pretty good job. But regretfully, you know, they've now been taken off the chessboard too, which is a bit sad.
And what about your successor will have, as you would have had, a nice invitation to the opening of the Beijing Olympics? If you'd received that, would you have gone?
Well, this is an interesting one. I'm not going to prejudge what my successor would do, but let me
That's why I put it that way.
Let me put it in the context. I instigated 2 yearly meetings, once every 2 years, meetings of Commonwealth sports ministers. And we would always meet the night before the opening of the Commonwealth Games, and we did also the night before the opening of the Olympic Games, as we did in Athens last time. So yes, it's likely all of our sports ministers will be there because that is their job to be there. Yes, it's likely we will bring the Commonwealth ministers together for a meeting because we are able to do lots with the sports ministers in helping them in their own countries. Now, whether you jump across from there into the opening ceremony, well, that's yet to be seen. Yes, I was invited to the Athens opening ceremony, thoroughly enjoyed it. But my successor, he's going to have to wrestle with that one. And
I mean, there are advantages of handing over. Then you don't have to solve this one.
I don't need to solve. I don't need to address that particular issue. Put it that way.
Thank you, Don. It's a very, very great pleasure to have you with us, and we look forward to seeing you regularly and learning about your new future assignments and so on. So, and watch out to see if the successor to Don McKinnon does go to the opening ceremony in Beijing. In a minute, we'll be hearing about the disputed elections in Egypt. Elections get disputed, as you were saying, everywhere. And this is another disputed election after this short break.